Good to have you with us this morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thanks very much for being here. We are going to begin our show with the Trump administration ramping up pressure on Russia to end its war with Ukraine. On Wednesday, the Treasury Department announced harsh new sanctions on two of Russia's largest oil companies, essentially cutting them off from financial U.S. institutions. Those measures came just one day after President Trump confirmed that his planned meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin was canceled.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the U.S. sanctioned the oil companies in response to President Putin's, quote, refusal to end this senseless war. That meeting between Presidents Trump and Putin was supposed to happen this week in Budapest before it was shelved. NBC News Washington correspondent Alice Barr joins us now with the very latest. Alice, good morning.
Good morning, Joe and Savannah. President Trump has long threatened and then retreated from hitting Russia with new sanctions, preferring the carrot approach to try to bring Putin to the negotiating table, now turning to economic force. This morning, stalemate on stalemate, as President Trump announced a second planned summit with Russian President Putin aiming to end the war in Ukraine is off.
It didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get.
While new sanctions are on against Russia's two biggest oil companies, the Treasury Department citing Russia's, quote, lack of a serious commitment to a peace process.
I think that they'll certainly have an impact. They're massive sanctions.
Lawmakers in both parties have long pushed for tougher sanctions, Republicans applauding the president's move.
You have to compel Russia to engage in the peace process. They've shown they cannot be trusted.
Democrats still pressing for the bipartisan sanctions bill that goes much further.
Well, until Trump decides that he's going to back the bill here in Congress that puts real sanctions on Russia, and until he decides he's going to get another round of weapons to Ukraine, it's a good day every day for Vladimir Putin.
The urgency is clear in a deadly week for Ukraine. Here, firefighters carrying children from the scene after Ukrainian officials say Russian strikes hit a kindergarten. President Putin also overseeing a nuclear exercise as President Trump met with the NATO Secretary General, who promised increased pressure from Europe, including the latest in a string of sanctions packages, in a joint bid to choke off Russia's economy and force Putin to the table. Administration officials tell NBC News a phone call between the Secretary of State and Russian Foreign Minister ended when Russia said that fighting will continue until it gets concessions from Ukraine. Ukraine's president, meeting today with European leaders in Brussels, is reasserting that he will not give up territory to Russia. Joe and Savannah.
All right, Alice, thank you.
Well, in news about the White House itself, the entire East Wing is set to be demolished within days. That's according to Trump administration officials. The East Wing was built during the Roosevelt administration and is typically used by the First Lady and her staff. The demolition is part of an expansion of the ballroom construction project President Trump announced over the summer. Back in July, the president said the ballroom would be near the East Wing but not touching it. The National Trust for Historic Preservation, which was created by Congress, warned the administration in a letter the planned ballroom will, quote, overwhelm the White House itself. The president said the price tag on the project is now about $300 million and says it will be paid for by private donors. Comcast, that's the parent company of NBC Universal, was included on a list of top donors. It is unclear how much has been contributed.
It's day 23 of the federal government shutdown, and Republican and Democratic lawmakers remain very much at odds. The House still out of session, while the Senate continues to vote on a short-term Republican bill to get the government back open.
On Wednesday, the Senate failed for a 12th time to pass the House's stopgap bill. This time, 2 Democrats voted in favor of the bill, while 1 Republican voted against it. The shutdown is already the second longest in American history.
NBC News politics reporter Megan Leibowitz joins us now from Washington with the latest. Megan, good morning. So with the House still out of session this week, where do things stand right now more than 3 weeks into the shutdown?
Yeah, that's right. Good morning. So lawmakers are still pretty dug in here. There's no end in sight, and there's really not much sign of any potential movement going forward. As you mentioned, the House remains out of session this week. House Speaker Mike Johnson has said that he will bring the House back into session once Democrats vote for this Republican-led short-term government spending bill, funding bill. Now, it's unclear when that could potentially actually happen. There's no indication that more Democrats are changing their positions. Now, on the Democratic side, Democrats are still saying, hey, let's talk about health care first. Let's negotiate over these ACA, these Affordable Care Act subsidies that are set to expire at the end of this year. Now, take a listen to how both leader parties, what they had to say about this moving forward. Take a listen.
Democrats are the ones who manufactured this entire situation without a single Republican vote. And now, when the chickens are coming back home to roost, they're trying to blame the other team. It is utter nonsense. We won't engage in Democrats' hostage taking, nor will we pay a ransom.
Republicans have shown zero interest or capacity to reopen the government, enact a spending agreement that meets the needs of the American people, or address the health care crisis that Republicans have created.
Now, the longer that this goes on, the more impacts that we're starting to see. So federal workers, for example, are going to be missing their first full paycheck tomorrow. States are also starting to warn about SNAP benefits and not having the funding for those SNAP benefits, that Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, starting in November if the shutdown continues, guys.
That's exactly what I want to ask you about, Megan, is just the ways that we're seeing this start to impact real people, impact families across the country. Numerous Head Start programs are in danger of running out of funds if the shutdown continues in November. Tell us more about some of your reporting here, how people are feeling this.
Yeah, so there are actually a couple of Head Start programs that are set to close at the end of this week. Those are a few programs that were supposed to get their annual funding at the start of this month. They've been operating on reserves that have simply run dry at this point. Now, advocates are also pointing to November 1st when there's a group of about 130 plus additional Head Start programs that are supposed to get their annual funding then. Now, if they don't get their annual funding, then these programs are now turning to trying to find alternate sources of funding to try to stay open for as long as they can, or risk closing. Now, advocates are warning what this could potentially mean for children. So Head Start provides low-income families with child care support, learning programs, but also meals for the kids, health screenings for these kids as well. And so advocates are really concerned about what it means if kids aren't able to get those in these Head Start programs if the funding simply isn't there come a couple of weeks from now, guys.
Megan, we're also seeing this rare disagreement where Republicans are pushing back against President Trump's idea of importing beef from Argentina. Last weekend, the president said he's considering having the U.S. buy beef from the South American country. If you've been to the grocery store, you know beef's not cheap right now. What more do we know about this and some of the pushback?
Yeah, so it's a pretty rare source of disagreement. Now, we're hearing from some Republicans in especially these agriculture-heavy states saying that they don't know about this. So Senate Majority Leader John Thune had told NBC that this was a topic that had come up when Senate Republicans went to the White House earlier this week. Now, he comes from South Dakota. Now, as he's put it, it's a state that has more cattle than people. And so it's a real concern for some of his constituents. I also want to point you to what Senator Deb Fischer has had to say about this as well. She is from Nebraska. Take a look at what she had to say on X. She wrote, "Bottom line, if the goal is addressing beef prices at the grocery store, this isn't the way. Right now, government intervention in the beef market will hurt our cattle ranchers." Now, on top of that, 8 House Republicans have sent a letter to the White House asking for more information about this. So it's really not a usual, it's very unusual for these Republicans to be splitting with the Trump administration like this, guys.
All right, Megan, thank you so much. Now, 4 federal workers in our nation's capital hit hard by the shutdown. One food bank is expanding its distribution to try and keep them from going hungry. Reporter Amy Cho from our station in Washington, D.C. has a look at that group's efforts.
We're going to have enough for everybody. They're sending another truck.
With the government shutdown entering week 4 and no end in sight.
Just give her 2 boxes and a pizza.
For federal workers, the paychecks have stopped, but they still have families to feed.
You good? I hope it helps you.
The Capital Area Food Bank is now doing food giveaways for federal workers. Here at this site in Hyattsville, many folks asked that we not show their faces, but told us times have been tough.
It's not fair that the federal government employees and military members are being used as pawns in whatever this is.
Groceries are expensive. You go in one week, something's $5. The next time it's $10.
it's a tough time.
The food giveaways will take place 4 times a week at different locations in D.C.
God bless you. God bless you, okay? Y'all come back for church. 11 o'clock, we're here.
And these volunteers aren't the only ones stepping up.
We are opening our donations next week to federal workers, so we're asking people just to submit their information. We're going to put it on a list.
Shayna Greenbaum runs a meal delivery company in Hyattsville called Healthy Fresh Meals. Federal workers can sign up to receive about 3 to 5 meals at a time. Greenbaum herself used to work in the federal government and says she knows what it's like to be furloughed.
It's always been something really important to me to make sure that people are fed. It's how I grew up. My mom always said, if you have food and somebody else doesn't, you give it away, because that's just what you do.
Back at this giveaway site.
If you're in the line, you don't get served today, we'll schedule an appointment for tomorrow.
Federal workers say they're just holding out hope the shutdown ends soon.
Yes, we're going to pray we're back to work.
And our thanks to Amy Cho for that report.
Let's now bring in Craig Rice. He is CEO of the Manna Food Center in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is right outside of Washington, D.C. Craig, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. So we just heard from 2 different groups there in Washington, D.C. that are helping feed people. What about you? What are you seeing? How are you all responding to this crisis?
You know, well, it's staggering because what we saw was grocery prices at an all-time high. All of these things happened before the government shutdown. DOGE layoffs and firings, the USDA Farm to Food Bank program ceased, tariffs, and then couple that with the government shutdown, and it becomes a perfect storm. It's more expensive for us to serve the folks that are coming to our doors, and we're also seeing more of those individuals come to us as well.
So for federal employees who aren't getting paid, that's bad enough. But then you've got food benefit programs set to run out of funding at the end of the month, which is quickly approaching. I mean, how big of a blow will it be if programs like SNAP and WIC are cut, those payments don't come through?
Well, keep in mind that food banks were never designed to actually be the ones that provided the majority of meals for folks. SNAP benefits were designed to come with a 9-to-1 ratio, to where food banks would actually support 1 meal to every 9 meals provided by SNAP. So in essence, any reduction, even a 10% reduction in SNAP benefits, means a quadrupling of the requirement for food banks. And put that on top of what we've seen before. All of those challenges that I just mentioned are really making it untenable for us. You know, it was Governor Moore who spoke back on CNBC back in July that said this is the largest hit to food assistance that we've ever seen in our lifetime in this country's history. And that is something that we need to make sure that we're taking very seriously.
And Craig, by the way, these federal workers, it's not just in D.C. or your area. It's all over the country, workers that are being impacted by this. What are some of the best ways that people in any state could help their local food bank and thereby help their neighbors?
You know, I'm going to tell you right now, time, talent, and treasure are the 3 T's that we talk about. It is important. We need everything that you can give. Those who can volunteer their time to help us to manage these food lines, to be able to pack boxes. We need folks to do food raisers at the local grocery stores, making sure that they're working with their local community organizations, their food assistance providers. And then, of course, for those who can donate, we do need donations. You know, we do not rely solely on government funding or grants. Individuals, many people who can give $20, $30 have been stepping up to do so. It does make a difference in terms of us helping to meet the rising need.
Craig Rice, thank you very much for your time this morning and that message. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dozens of federal officers are expected to arrive in San Francisco today as part of the Trump administration's aggressive nationwide immigration crackdown. California Governor Gavin Newsom warned residents National Guard troops could also be deployed to help with arrests.
San Francisco's mayor said despite what the federal government says, the city has seen a historic drop in crime. He says they have been preparing for potential federal raids for months, and he urged people to stay calm.
If federal officials come to incite chaos on the streets of San Francisco, the way to support our communities and keep everyone in our city safe is to make our voices heard peacefully. Violence and destruction will only open the door to a more aggressive response, and that puts our communities at greater risk.
NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley is tracking these developments for us. Julia, good morning. So San Francisco's mayor there also said they weren't exactly sure what the Trump administration was planning. What do we know about the federal agents heading to San Francisco, and how else are city and state officials getting ready for that?
Well, Joe, this is the latest escalation in what's also turned into a legal battle between the Trump administration and the state of California over the federalizing of National Guard. That doesn't mean the governor calling up National Guard within his state to deploy, say, in case of emergency, but that is when the federal government, aka the president, sends in the National Guard. That's something that Gavin Newsom sued and won over earlier this year in lower court. That case went to an appeals court yesterday, where a 3-judge panel seems skeptical about the president's authority to be able to federalize the National Guard in the state of California. But at that exact same time, we heard in a San Francisco Chronicle report that the Trump administration was preparing to send at least 100 members of the National Guard into San Francisco as early as today. And that's something the president himself confirmed on Fox News just last night. So we'll see what happens and if the courts have to step in to stop further federalizing of the National Guard in California.
Julia, in an effort to meet the White House's immigration demands, the labor that they're doing here, a hiring surge was implemented over the summer to try to expedite the process of hiring new ICE officers. But we know that you recently spoke to 3 DHS officials. You've got some exclusive reporting here. It really comes down to like a lack of thorough vetting for these new recruits. Your sources here, one of them a current official, the other are 2 former officials. What did they tell you about what's happening?
That's right. We were able to review some data that shows that although there is a 10,000-person hiring goal by the end of the year, they're less than halfway to meeting that, despite 175,000 applications. And part of the reason is because they're not able to do the vetting as quickly. And so they've seen, in some cases, new recruits showing up for training without having gone through the proper vetting. They're supposed to have submitted to fingerprints and drug tests. In some cases, people are showing up saying they haven't done that. And then when they do get those tests, they have found criminal backgrounds and safety concerns, although that's in fewer than 10 cases. Most recently as a few weeks ago, they found a new recruit who had been cleared to show up for training, actually had charges stemming from domestic violence and assault and battery that had been cleared to show up. And so what these officials are telling me is that they're worried about the people who might be slipping through the cracks in this rush to hire people.
We've been talking a lot about Chicago, and now the state of Illinois is pushing back on the presence of federal law enforcement there. It launched a new hotline. It's called Plate Watch. It urges the public to report any instances of federal officers breaking the law. Walk us through what we know about this hotline and how the federal government's responding.
Yeah, this is coming from Illinois Attorney General Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias. And the reason it's called Plate Watch is because of what's been happening with license plates on the vehicles that federal officers have been using on the streets of Chicago and other areas of Illinois, where they are disguising their vehicles and sometimes swapping out license plates so that if protesters are taking pictures, they're not able to then go track down that vehicle later. Sometimes they'll have a different license plate on the front versus the back. This might be one of the small windows the state has to do something about this the large presence of federal agents when it comes to immigration in Illinois, because that is a violation of state law to be swapping out license plates. And so they are asking people to now start calling in when they see any kind of overreach from federal officers.
Julia, also, several people were detained in this federal operation in New York City this week. We played the video here. It's been a lot of talk in New York, even came up in the mayoral debate here in New York City last night. This was down in Lower Manhattan, Canal Street, a big tourist area. What do we know about this right at this point?
Yeah, that's right. And, you two are New Yorkers. You know how that area is very prevalent with street vendors. And that's exactly who they say they were targeting. They say this was based on intelligence they received about people in this area. 9 were arrested, and they sent out their mugshots and a rap sheet of previous criminal charges that they said these people had perpetrated. But what also happened here, because of that area, because of how congested it is, there were clashes with protesters. DHS says at least 1 officer was assaulted, and we know there were some injuries and arrest of protesters as well.
All right. Julia Ainsley. Julia, appreciate all your reporting. Thank you so much.
Now let's get to the trouble brewing in the tropics this morning. Tropical storm Melissa is threatening the Caribbean and is expected to turn into a hurricane as we head into the weekend.
Here in New York, though, it's much cooler. It's cloudy and a chilly morning commute for many.
Angie Lassman is here with the forecast. Angie, good morning.
Hi, guys. Good morning. Let's start with the tropics because, of course, yes, we've got Tropical Storm Melissa coming in with wind speeds up to 50 miles per hour and moving at really just inching along, I should say. We've got a 3-mile-per-hour movement towards the northwest, still more than 200 miles to the south-southeast of Kingston, Jamaica. And that number is not going to change a whole lot in the short term. As I mentioned, we're inching along as we get through Saturday, still likely maintaining that tropical storm strength until we get later into the day. That's when we'll see this system become a hurricane. And down the line, we'll be talking about a major hurricane as we get into the early parts of our upcoming work week. In that time, we don't cover a lot of distance with this system. We're going to talk about this being kind of just hanging out right near Jamaica as we get into Tuesday as a category 4 storm. We'll likely see a whole lot of rain being dumped on this region between now and then. We could see anywhere from 5 to 10 inches for a widespread area across parts of Hispaniola, Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti specifically, and Jamaica as well. Going to see likely those highest amounts of rain and the potential for some of these hurricane force winds. So we'll watch for this for a prolonged period too, since it is moving at such a slow speed. And we expect it to continue at that speed for really the long term. Here's what those spaghetti model tracks say, though, down the line. Notice we're kind of talking about the meandering just in the central Caribbean and then taking a hard northeastern turn here as we get way down the line. So we're not looking at likely any impacts for the United States from Melissa, but worth watching here as we get through the next couple of days. And as we mentioned, it is chilly outside. We've got those frost and freeze alerts stretching from the mid-Atlantic to the plains and up through the Midwest. More than 39 million people included in that. And we've got temperatures across the board anywhere from the 30s to the high 40s. So waking up in Indianapolis at 35 degrees. We've got St. Joseph, Missouri at 35 degrees as well. Hot Springs even 37 degrees. And those temperatures are going to remain below average as far as the highs are concerned across that region, guys, as we get through the day today. We'll see some cool and some warm spots throughout the day tomorrow. And then as we get into next week, sweater weather continues. Sweater weather. Yeah, it takes a lot of restraint to not say it like that. Huh?
You can't just say
it's ingrained in our brain.
It is. And I'm happy about it. Thanks, Angie.
We thank you for watching. And remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.